I always love connecting with other people who have reached my level or higher, because I've noticed that there's a lot of bullshit in the industry, a lot of
Yes.
entrepreneurs, and nothing against you, but like lots of people selling courses who have never achieved anything, but they're kind of like regurgitating the same stuff that they have maybe gotten from another course. So just like shared experiences is what I really value. That's why it's hearing from you what you have experienced, and maybe just one sentence, one thing that maybe like, I don't know, like was stopping me mentally, or maybe just like haven't looked at anything from a particular angle, maybe that you have looked at, because your background is different, my background is different. And to your point, in a different way compared to me, pretty much everyone has a different path. So just like hearing, a tidbit, maybe, something that's relevant to me, maybe like to you it was easy. Maybe for me, it's the opposite,
It's always the case. Yeah. And we all have different paths. My path is very unconventional, but it it has taken 14 years. I wasted about 7 years. I hate to say I wasted 7 years. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a mentor, no experience. So those 7 years were very, is experiential even a word? I don't know, but I learned a lot, and I learned pretty much everything I shouldn't be doing. If only I had a time machine. But yeah, maybe I should have got a coach when I first started. It was rocky. But Tom, how the hell do you say your surname? Is it Bukevicius?
I'd say like an American version is it's Bukevicius. Yeah, that's probably the best way to pronounce it.
Bukevicius.
Yeah, so I'm a principal and co-founder at Scube. Essentially, we help e-commerce companies drive more gross profit through paid ads and analytics. That's essentially the essence in terms of what I do. Currently, I'm more responsible for sales and marketing for the team, and I still help out with the team, with some kind of like more complex problems so that the team members encounter, like maybe a bigger account, more complex account, maybe like there's some sort of kind of like technical element that the team needs help with. They typically ask for my help in that area. And just kind of like overall, like more like strategic, strategic direction in terms of, let's say, how we, pretty much like how we move forward. How do we kind of like take it, to the next level?
So you're founder and sort of lead or strategic steer. Is that it's what I call myself?
Yeah, we can call it that way. Yeah, because I founded it, but then actually my wife joined the company later. So she's a partner in the business. She runs operations, pretty much like all service delivery team members. They report to her. But yeah, pretty much like I'm the one who started, but then she helped me to take pretty much like to help me grow Scube and expand, because I've noticed that you have to have kind of like a yin yang between different team members. So you have to have someone who is good at kind of coming up with direction, coming up with products or services that one should sell, having kind of like frameworks or processes in terms of how they should be delivered based on what your observations in the market, then sell them, and then the other team member has to be responsible for operations, essentially making hiring, making sure that team members stay with you for a long time, making sure that the client retention is high. We essentially making sure that pretty much we deliver what we promise. So I'm that first part of the team. Initially, I was both.
Yeah, well, that is the solo founder's sort of diction, isn't it? It's everything: your lead gen, your marketing, your sales, your onboarding, your technicals, your reporting, your strategy. Yes, and I think that there's not necessarily a revenue number, but I mean, I haven't even looked at my own flow chart, but I have a flow chart for agency priorities where I believe that you should be prioritizing in stage 2 of my flow chart to split operations out from essentially front end stuff. And I do believe that agency owners should be at that stage, like the 25K a month kind of agency, so still small, should have a dedicated operations. Now, you might have a co-founder that does that, and in your case, it's sort of a co-founder, but it's the wife, which brings its potential issues, I guess, having being the wife. But yeah, splitting out that.
Yes. First 6 months, it was tough until we actually had to divvy up the responsibilities because we were both very driven. So we're kind of like stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah. But it is the perfect split. It's essentially front of house and then operations. It's like it's the sales versus the work,
Yes.
and trying to mix that is a nightmare, especially for the agency owner. And I think the agency owner can get the most out of doing the sales, not the operations. But we cling on to the operations because I think a lot of us are start off technical, especially in the SEO or PPC space. We start off as technical or the doers. So how long you started? Because what's your turnover roughly at the minute?
So it's close to 1.2 mil a year.
And how long you been around?
Since 09. So close to what, 15 years this May?
15 years. So 100 grand a year of perfect growth.
No, not perfect. I would say it was like, as you mentioned, the beginning was choppy because I was, when I started it, I was actually doing this on weekends, like for 4 years. So it was kind of like almost like a hobby.
Yes.
A little side gig. Then in 13, I started actually at full time.
Okay, so officially 2013, we'll say the agency started. So you went from freelance to agency.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could call it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say since 13 full time, then in 14, my wife joined because then I was like, I think we were doing like 200K a year or something like that. And pretty much like I could not handle everything because
Yeah,
it was a ton of stuff to handle. And but at the same time, I did have some freelancers that did not, some did work out, some did not. And maybe it's a big lesson, I would say, if you can, either get a co-founder or hire someone full time to help you. The big problem with freelancers is that sure, they're temporary, but at the same time, there are points, especially when you're a young agency, the temporary factor is not a good thing because actually I've had a couple freelancers, raise rates like a few times on me, and I'm like, shit, I can't afford this anymore. Yeah, I would say it's important. But yeah, then in 2014 she joined B, and then there was a pretty much like two person team. Then next year we had 2 more full-time employees and physical office, and then we just kind of like so this was like a kind of like a big jump, and then I would say for like a, let's see, actually I did a timeline here so it's easier to actually remember what but I would say
yeah, it's okay. My memory's foggy all the time.
Yeah, but I'd say like 4 years we were doing like less than 300K a year, something like that. But then there were a few jumps, which is actually I started focusing more on marketing because I realized actually up to maybe when was it? Maybe up to 2015 or so, I fully relied on referrals, and my network wasn't massive. So, and at the same time, it's like, well, how do you know people? I mean, you're not going to ask your neighbor if you need like PPC services.
Not unless you want a bad client.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so I think that that when I started to actually implementing some marketing, our company, then things started changing. Started getting more leads. Then I realized actually I'm not that good in sales, so I needed to train up on some some sales processes and some sales activities. Also, I'd say maybe like prior to like when I was starting, we were offering too many services to pretty much like almost like everyone. So that's kind of like a I'm sure you have talked to and quite a few others have talked about. I think that you don't realize until you actually do it yourself, and then you actually kind of get burned from your mistakes. But in 2015, we actually had we actually redid our brand, and we did our pretty much like we established a more specific specialization. So we essentially got rid of SEO, like social media stuff, like websites, and just focused purely on PPCs because we actually
this sounds very much like my journey.
Yeah,
I went full service, hit 300K.
Okay.
Did you plateau a bit at 300K?
Prior or after specialization?
So after, so did your specialization? So
yeah. Okay.
So you went down to being PPC.
Yes. So 2 things happened actually, and it was actually bad.
Okay.
So what happened was we hired this branding agency, out of Brooklyn, New York, and they were actually cool. They actually helped us to kind of come up with that, because they were, doing like, brand positioning and all of that. They came up with like a new logo, helped us actually to come up with a new name and stuff. They did this exercise, and throughout the exercise, we did kind of like an 80-20 analysis, and we have realized that pretty much like most of the revenue was coming from PPC. That was like one thing. We were getting most results from PPC, and actually we enjoyed it most. After this, it kind of like felt like, we were doing favor, to some clients by helping with other areas, because we're pretty much like, maybe we're not as good as we could have been, or maybe like we had like the wrong clients for, back in the day. But yeah, that helped us to actually, focus. The other thing that we have done is that we have realized it's like we actually had to say no to lead gen clients. So we said, you know what, we're going to do this for e-commerce, because we've noticed that back then we were not able to help problem solve lead quality issues. So we would get a bunch of leads, things would look good from our end, but then clients would say, well, it's not a quality lead, blah, 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 blah. And back then, since there was not a lot of specialization in the team, I didn't have like the mental capacity or expertise just to kind of problem solve for that. So we actually dropped as like the lead gen side. And what happened was that after we announced it, and after we fired a few clients, we lost a couple big clients. And it was like,
did you think you'd made the wrong? Did you think I've made the wrong move?
Yeah, because we almost reached like 300K that year. We announced it. We lost a couple of clients, and actually 2 team members left. So then there was like 2 of us left, and our revenue dropped like next year by like almost like 100K, and it was just like shit.
But
we shot ourselves in the foot.
But everything became easier.
Yes, but then it was like there were a few things that started happening. So I still continued on the the referral route. So we I partnered with some agencies that are full service, because previously you could not talk to anyone who's full service. Hey, I'm full service too. How about you send me some clients, right?
Yeah.
But with our specialty, then we were able to start partnering with some agencies that they were full time, pretty much like full service. They offered everything. They had a wider client base, and we were kind of like a specialist arm for those agencies to help them with more complex PPC accounts. So that started helping with the overall like a lead flow and the overall business.
But did you find? I don't know if you still take on referrals.
No, referral or white label, 2 different things.
Yeah, they are. My concern, my issue with referrals, full stop. They're great as a sticky plaster to get some money in early, but you can't control them. And I don't mean the rate that they come in, but the quality of the leads. And what I've found is it's really very hard to say no to an agency referring you to work, because you feel like you're letting them down, because they've got, let's say it's an SEO agency.
Right.
And they're working with a specific client that you've got no experience of, or you don't want to work with that type of client. In your case, it would be lead gen. So you've got these agencies coming to you and saying, oh, well, we've got this. And you're like, we don't want it. It's very difficult to say no to those referrals, because then that agency is going to go, well, we don't want to work with you in the future then, because you're going to cherry pick. And that's my big concern with referrals. And I just got into a few issues over the years trying to deal with referrals, because I was trying to get them into specific niches that I wanted to work with, because we had the experience in the case studies for them.
Yeah, so similar experience. So one was we're strategic in terms of which agencies we align with. So not just like some random agency. Initially it was just anyone local.
Yeah.
Anyone with potential clients. Because at the same time, we did not have a clear picture in terms of, let's say, who our ideal client, is, and all of these things, right? But we've gotten more selective. But I agree with you; it was hard, and also, maybe I'd like to kind of differentiate, like overall, like referrals versus white label. So white label is essentially we do work under their umbrella. So we have tried that for years, and it was somewhat successful. But then later, we like after deeper analysis, and after we have significantly improved our own client base, we reduced that more and more. And now I think maybe now we don't take white label, but I would say like it started in maybe 2010 or so, when budgets got cut. Guess who got cut first? Like from those agencies, we did.
Yeah.
So that was bad. And the other thing is that it was harder to raise rates and ask for essentially what you're worth, because
the agency, the other side, has to pass it on. So it's a double step to get that rate to go up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that we have noticed that when you have this type of relationship, like white label relationship, is that you don't control the client flow. To your point. So we've gotten some bad clients, needy clients that we had to serve just because we had a pre-existing relationship and we had a commitment to support that agency. So it was tough because like you had to take pretty much like everything under that agency, because otherwise you were kind of like risking damaging the relationship. So I would say that, and maybe like the final thing is that maybe poor expectation management. Some agencies were good, some agencies were pretty bad on this, and then we would get like too many questions, or maybe questions that maybe that we should have been discussed, or maybe even like goals that should have been maybe realigned, and so on, to make sure that what's communicated to the end client is correct, and at the same time the kind of there's no scope creep from the account management side.
Yeah, I think if you do white label all referrals, you've as the PPC side of things, I think you've got to control so much of it right up until the point of sale. And I'd even argue before the sale, because I've got a pre-onboarding checklist, not an onboarding, a pre-onboarding, and it's essentially a risk assessment of the client.
Okay.
And you run through all these checks to make sure if there's any red flags before you take money. So I think if you've got something like that down, and then you've got a very strict process, how you work, communicate, who does what, and really structure it, then white labeling works. But you still have to be specialist. I think a white labeler that, I know that white labelers who are PPC agencies really struggle because they have everything thrown at them. Whereas someone like Justin Rondeau did a video with me, Invisible PPC, and they're lead gen.
Okay.
So, and mainly local service businesses, some national stuff, but your roofers, your plumbers, that sort of stuff.
Right.
And ultimately, they're all very similar from a Google Ads perspective, the lead gen flow, landing pages, the CRMs, the tracking. So they can have a very structured approach. But if you started throwing insurance companies into the mix and e-com, it would be hell. It would be hell to run that white label agency. So how long did it take you to get to 1 mil then in rev?
So we reached 1 mil in 2021.
I love the way you're checking your notepad.
Well, actually, by the way, thanks to you, because like you asked me some questions, so I actually came up with like 8 pages of like reflections, and actually I did the timeline. Hold on, let me show you. So pretty much like this is like
oh, brilliant.
From the start, which is like revenue, new clients, and new team members by year, and then some few milestones. So then it's easier to have a conversation because I didn't want to ramble.
I should probably do that because I tend to ramble. So sorry, you went from 300K what year?
It was like 286 in 2015, and then we actually went down to like 200, then 217 in 16 and 17 after we specialized.
Yeah.
But then we started marketing, and then it was like 315, 507, 725, and then $1 million and $1.
3.5, 4 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a transformation. That's like ignoring all the nonsense you see on social media to double for 3 years straight. A double, no, sorry, 50%, not double. It's 50%, 50%, 50%. I think.
Yeah.
Either way, it's very impressive. It's very good. I haven't asked you about profit, but I'm assuming your profit levels were sort of steady, or did you cut into them?
I would say things became better. Maybe like I'd say maybe 500K mark was when things started improving significantly, because you have an overhead, right? So pretty much like you have to reach enough people who are pretty much like enough clients and enough team members who are purely focused on service
Mm.
delivery. Because initially, when you think about like, I like to break everything down into like sales and marketing, and then there's like, someone responsible for operations. Then, you have team members who are responsible for service delivery. So I think that maybe like 500K is something that is like I would say maybe a breaking point, because then, like, let's say you're a founder, pretty much like you have to, pay yourself, you have to pay for, all of like overhead expenses and all of that. So you have to reach a certain point. I haven't taken notes on this. So, but I would say like roughly, I think that that's kind of like the point where when things get better for the agency owners. Before that, if you're investing, almost reinvesting everything back into the business, because like that's what we did. Depending on how you look at the, gross profit, net profit, and also, how much salary you take, or, do you take actually, a market rate salary, all those factors. But I would say like 500K would probably be a good breaking point for you to, see decent profitability.
You are very similar to me. So on my flowchart, I've got 50K as that critical, 50K a month as that critical mass point where you should be in this position where profit's going up, not just revenue, and you should be quite removed from doing all the stuff. So that's very interesting. And this is the problem that everyone has when they're a freelancer or a solo agency owner, and they might get to 7, 10K a month, and then they're starting to hit the ceiling of their output, physically. I've run out of time to go and do marketing. And it's taking that step of saying, which is what I did, well, I can't have that 10 grand a month. I've got to give someone 5 of it to then to step back essentially financially. I'm going to reduce my financial winnings or whatever.
Yep.
You unlock me to go and do the bloody marketing. And if you find the right person is the tricky thing, and it's taking that risk, that leap of faith to do that. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people that are watching this and a lot of people contemplating that, where actually there's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business where you are a freelancer, a well-paid freelancer, you're doing 6 figures. You don't have to hire people, you don't have to grow an agency if you're happy at that point. So I think people really need to consider that picture many years ahead of what they actually want, and then reverse engineer it, because it shouldn't always be about the money, because people get to a certain point where they're like hitting their head on the ceiling and they can't make any more money apart from putting the prices up. But it doesn't always have to be like that if you've got a good balance. And this is the bit for in your story, you're a bit bigger than that. It was more like 25K a month, but you flipped the marketing switch on. So what one thing did you do? Because you did your branding exercise, you specialized. I used to call PPC specializing, but I now have pivoted and I don't think it's specialist enough. Just saying you do Google Ads, I don't actually think it's a specialism anymore. I think you have to go a bit narrower, but your e-com Google Ads, so it's a bit narrower still. But
and I would say, maybe I'll add a couple of things. I like to say that we do Google Ads. We're really successful. So there are two angles. So one is we do Google Ads for boring but essential companies.
Well, it's where money is.
Right. So as an example, like automotive aftermarket parts.
Yep.
Like selling radiators or,
yep, big business.
Connector, boring stuff, right? But it's a big business. It's complex business. Typically, we're dealing with, tens of thousands, actually, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of SKUs. That's that it's scalable, right? So that's one side. The other side that we work in is kind of like B2B supplies. So hats, like helmets, boots, welding equipment, that type of stuff. The other area is like sports equipment. So like, so I'd say we have quite a few niches that are boring but essential. Where you won't find us is selling, promoting makeup, apparel, jewelry, kind of like that type of side of the e-com business. I'm not sure if we're good. I think I can hire probably a few people and then maybe we can become a lot better. But I would say like our core focus is on those areas, kind of like boring but essential.
But it's big enough. There's plenty of it. And this is the thing. People get distracted. It's like, oh, we could take on that, I don't know, jogging bottom or lycra leggings business, or you get distracted. It's like, well, we don't really work with those sort of people. So okay, so you are more specialist. You have a type, which I think is the right way to do it. You have this pivot though, this marketing pivot. So
Yes.
what was that? What was the main piece that you did marketing wise that changed the game? Because you had quite a jump in revenue.
Yeah. So a few things. Blogging was one thing. So
Okay.
I started writing guest posts. So maybe I've heard of like a company, Unbounce, Conversion Excel, BigCommerce, a few others, and I started writing blogs on our site, and then a few pretty much like some sites with audience, right? Because I think maybe something that maybe the audience should learn is that like try to figure out at least like roughly where your audience is, and then try to write articles. And we've gotten some leads. It wasn't massive. I did partner with a couple folks. I actually did some couple of podcasts back then. And then we talked about Google Ads, but it was like more like for Shopify stores, that type of thing. Also directories. So there are directories. So if let's say Google, let's say PPC companies within a particular niche, or stuff like that. Back in what was it, like maybe 17 or 16, companies like Clutch, maybe I've heard of.
Yeah.
Manifest, and companies like that started popping up, and then they started being pretty much like on top of the search results. So actually I got active in particularly with Clutch, and that helped us to drive a lot of leads to the business. We were specialists, we were good at this, and I think I joined Clutch when there was like maybe 5,000 or 7,000 companies. Now there's like 25,000 companies, but we did maintain, I'd say, like almost always top 10 positions. Like when you do like Clutch, research based on customer reviews, case studies, all of that stuff, we actively worked on making sure that pretty much like, that side is working. And we were demonstrated as leaders within that area. So there were two things actually at play. Number one was third-party social proof, because, they're calling your customers, or your customers are filling out, and then, Clutch folks are verifying, that you actually worked with them. So it's like, third-party validation, which helps with research if somebody's looking at, you as a potential partner. And the other thing was that, these sites were driving a lot of traffic. So based on that, it's like, you get, relevant traffic plus social proof. It's like, hey, look at Scube. This is, one is like, it's rated well, and it's a top leader. It's almost like feels like somebody did your homework for you.
So when you've got no audience, because I love YouTube. So that's wrong. Sorry. I hate doing videos. They make me nervous, but I love the outcome of doing videos. YouTube has been brilliant for me over the years. Really, really brilliant. It's made me seven figures, but you have to build the audience up, whereas you went where the audience is. Now, interestingly, I also did the same as you back in the mid 2000s. I wrote for convert.com, SEMrush, Ahrefs. So I did the whole thing of writing a guest post for a number of these blogs like you did. So I did the same thing. And that worked very well as social proof, because when people were researching for me or the agency, I'd come up and there'd be links back, and it'd be stuff you could cite as well. I think I had an article on BigCommerce, or I was in one of their roundups many, many years ago. So yeah, you're using someone else's audiences. And yeah, that was nearly 10 years ago, but you can still do that today. A podcast is sort of the newer way, even though podcasts were still around then. You could do like a round trip on podcasts, like a road show where you get interviews across many different podcasts through an industry, for example. Like you're focusing on, I don't know, enterprise e-commerce. You could find a load of different podcasts related to that and turn up and show your face and talk to people. And that's a great way to get started if you want to drive traffic and awareness. It takes a bit of effort, but it's hard to grow your own audience, and everyone's trying to do it. Like, you only have to look at LinkedIn. Everyone's trying to be a guru and grow their following. It's tricky.
I think that, like with LinkedIn, it's something that I'm considering doing this year, because I haven't done much LinkedIn at all. But I've noticed that everybody is trying to kind of like write an epic story, which is like, it's not like I despise them, but to me, it like looks too cheesy. It's like, look at this happened and we saved them. And I'm like, it's like, I don't know. To me, it's like, sounds like a bunch of bullshit. I don't know.
An echo chamber.
Yeah. I'll share one thing. I tried YouTube back in 2017, and maybe you can look it up. I started a channel called Customer Science. But maybe a mistake that I made was that I decided to take it to do it professionally,
Okay.
and you know, my revenue was kind of low back then, so it was not sustainable. So I actually did it with a professional editor. We actually rented out a studio, and I was just doing these like segments, like super edited segments, with about like Google Ads, like that type of stuff.
You
with
did all
some
the stuff that no one gives a toss about. All the branding and the magic and the polish.
yes,
If I could make 7 figures with one light and no effort, and some of my old videos are awful, it just tells you how premature trying to do all the posh editing and the lighting, all the fancy stuff. That's like when you get to the, like, even at my level, like most people say, oh, you should be doing it, and I'm like, I'm perfectly fine as I am. It works. And people get too distracted by the branding, the logos, all the fancy jazz, when it's, I mean, you've got a device in your hand, you've got a recording studio in your hand. Just record a video on your phone. That's good enough to get you started. I attracted a few big businesses from my early videos, and my early videos are really bad. And these businesses were spending millions on Google Ads, millions. But they watched my videos and like, oh, I want to talk to this bloke because he seems like he knows what he's doing. But sorry, I cut you off because you made.
Yeah, just interjection about the stuff that I tried, but to me, I can't say that YouTube worked. But to your point, I did it for like 4 or 5 episodes because like I think it was like a lot of my time, and it was like maybe $1,500 a pop, to pay to the editor and to film and all of that. And it was expensive back then. I mean, just when you think about it, can you do it weekly? No, or even daily? I mean, it's it's a lot of money.
Yeah, if you're turning over 100K, 200K, and you wanted a full-blown show, I mean, it's a third of your income, not your profit. So
exactly. Lesson learned, and it was good, but I do see value with YouTube, and I think that my perspective has changed, but at the same time, I think it's almost like 2020. But I could not have made this decision back then because I was overwhelmed with everything that was going around me. Now, get to step back and say, all right, well, let's really think about marketing, right? Because let's say I don't have to deal with, let's say, 40 or 50, accounts in terms of what's happening, within each account myself, right? So I think that allows me to kind of step back and really think about and just be a bit more strategic and thoughtful. Back then, it was just like, let's do a bunch of stuff to get traction. That was the goal, right? And well, I was spending like, a ton of hours. Like I think I remember I was like spending like 20 to 30 hours per article to, because there was like 2,000-3,000 word articles, for those guest posts. I didn't have kids back then, so I could afford to do that. I could afford to, write.
It's not sustainable.
Not sustainable, yeah. But some of those things have worked, and I was able to kind of like push the agency, to the next level through a few things that have worked.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. It's not, the medium doesn't matter. You do audio, you can do video, you can do writing, you can send bloody postcards, and yes, postcards can work. I think this is the problem. Especially when you're newer in running a business, you try and do everything at once. You try and do all these different, and also you're impatient. So you might try, not to pick on you, but you might try your video and you do 5 and you say, oh, I'm not getting leads. But if you'd just done another 5, you'd go to lead. If you did another 50, you'd have 100 leads. And
right.
And it's just as I suggest with agencies, that you focus, you narrow your focus, service and delivery, and niching and industries. It's true of marketing. It's like you go all in on something. If it's Twitter, it's Twitter, but you go all in and you try it till you've given it a good try, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it may be, but you don't try it once and fail, because everything works. If your audience is there, everything works. Facebook ads might be the perfect thing for your agency if you work in a certain service industry. It might fail miserably for e-com. Okay, well, tutorial videos on YouTube might work perfectly for e-com, but not something else. So it's all, ultimately, where's your audience? And that's why using someone else's audience it's still a great method. So anyone watching this, you don't have to put 40 hours into a blog like Tom did. I do remember these 3,000 word articles. That was the sort of standard, wasn't it? They did take a lot of effort. I remember Ahrefs really wanted a heavily researched piece, a unique piece about SEO and PPC. And it did take a lot of time back then, days of work. So yeah, but I think they pay you back. And back, I don't know if Rand Fishkin's still on the scene, but Rand was doing the same. And Larry Kim, they were names that I saw all the time, guest blogging. Was Larry HubSpot? I can't bloody remember now, but Rand was obviously...
It was WordStream.
Yes, that's it. Sorry, beg your pardon. He was WordStream. And then Rand was obviously Moz.
Yep.
Yeah. And they did content marketing, and it still works. But it's a different avenue, different angle, different sort of effort. Because some people do not want to record videos, and I understand that. So just circling back a bit then. So how many team members do you have now at your current size?
So right now there's 10 of us full-time.
Okay.
We're actually looking for 2 more. So like we're actively interviewing. So hopefully, by the end of this month, there will be 12. And we have 6 contractors.
It's quite a sizable chunk. So you're sort of doing 100K a head?
Somewhere there, yeah.
Okay.
And contractors, we have 2 folks who are doing cold emails for us, and we just 3 months ago I hired someone to actually help me with closing. So actually now I'm trying to take it to the next level, which is I don't sell anymore. Trying to kind of work out through the kinks so I can actually step back from sales as well. And then on the other side, we have 2 specialists, two specialists. Like one guy's doing Pinterest, and someone else is actually helping with another like specialty PPC account, a couple of accounts, and then we have a copywriter, as a contractor, just kind of like supporting. But I would say like 95% of the work that is which is like in terms of like our core verticals, core areas of expertise is done in house, and yeah.
Do you feel that now when you hit 1 million that you where you've become specialist, that because you've got more revenue, things start to creep out a little bit? So you're hiring for a bit of Pinterest, you're trying a bit of cold email. Do you feel that it's because you get this confidence because you got the revenue? I don't want to call it complacency, but that revenue sort of frees you up to try more things, or do you think it allows things to creep a bit?
So great question. I haven't thought too much about that, but I would say it allows me to maybe experiment more. But typically, when we experiment with some areas, it's typically done by market demand. So as an example, like Pinterest, right? A long-term client, I mean, he's been with us maybe since 2018 or so. So we started with Google, like we maximize it, so I think we're starting like 7K, but then I think we went up to like maybe 50K a month in ad spend. Yeah, so we maximized that. Then we added Facebook because he trusted. Like then we test Bing. Bing wasn't that successful, based on return on ad spend. And then he's like, "Wait, I want to do Pinterest," and I'm like, "Well, we don't do that, but it's a good client." So then we said, let us like find out, someone who's a specialist, like not another agency, but like someone who's really good. And the guy was actually he's like working full time at another company, similar industry. He does that full time in house, and approached him, and then like he did the audit, and we're like, looks like our values match and everything else, and then he started doing that, and we've been doing that for the past like 3-4 years. So
do you now upsell Pinterest to other clients where it's appropriate?
Where appropriate, or where they ask. We don't necessarily focus too deep on that. Maybe we should, but it's like whenever there's a need, we do explore that. But I kind of go by the number of requests. So actually now we have had multiple requests about TikTok ads. I'm waiting because actually right now, like in terms of, let's say, TikTok ads can be okay, maybe. I don't have like too much of like firsthand experience, and I don't have a TikTok account, right? But looking at the pure metrics and pure numbers and pure requirements, like the question is like, can they produce video in the first place? Can they do X, Y, Z? And then if that's the case, then we can explore that. Just because it's unfortunately there are kind of like sharks out there, like other agencies who are full service, and they may try to take away business just because the client does not necessarily want to manage separate channels, with separate teams, right? So in some cases, it does. I feel like it does make sense to approach additional services that help with the overall growth of the company, that we're serving.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's as long as it doesn't become a distraction, and that investment can be scaled, and it adds to the outcome, the value proposition. I think with TikTok ads, yeah, I'm not particularly familiar with TikTok ads, but if it adds value to the outcome, and it defends you from another agency stealing your client away, then I think we have to consider it, don't we? Strategically, is it Google ads and e-com, is that sufficient? I don't think it is. I think basket abandonment, email follow-ups and stuff like that are possibly required, not for all. And then some other strategic things, maybe even conversion optimization. But beyond that, when you hit your spend limit in Google ads, because if you're doing a good job and the client's doing a good job, that's the other important thing. If they're running a good business with a good product, you can actually get to your max spend in Google ads relatively quickly. And then it's a point where you can't spend anymore. And the client's like, well, get us more. And it's like, well, where do you come from? And you could double your client every year for 5 years. They love you. But as soon as you hit that maximum clip, they're going to be going, wow, do we need another agency? Even though you've done a splendid job. And this is the problem. And I think e-com can hit that problem.
They've experienced that. Yep. It's like, it'd be great until you reach a certain point, and especially if the business leaders want to grow every year.
Yes.
Then it becomes, maybe you're great at going from 0 to maybe let's say 100K, and then maybe like from 100K to, let's say, I don't know, like a few 100K. But then maybe like if they want to try to reach 1 million, you can't just do that with Google ads, depending on the industry, of course, because there are limits. Then you have to look into other channels and so on. So I think that you have to be strategic, but I think that to avoid the scope creep and maybe kind of like noise around you, at least what I found was at least somewhat successful. And it's not, I'm not testing it at a massive scale at all. But I would say finding non-competing specialists, like, could be freelancer, contractor, someone maybe who's, really competent in this and who aligns with your value, and then maybe get them to work on those like non-core channels. That's because like then you don't have to develop, process documentation. You can share it in terms of how we work, basic structure, but you don't have to develop a specific checklist on, how you optimize certain things on Pinterest, especially let's say if your guy's like doing like spending 100K a month on ads doing Pinterest, who's an expert at this,
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? So if you don't in-house it, so you essentially become a project manager for the client. The client might not even be aware that this Pinterest person is not your employee, which is fine. So you're adding value, but the risk is then if you're contracting or using freelancers that they leave and they take that expertise with them. It's that tricky balance, isn't it? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it. I think the overarching thing for me is control. So you control where the client goes because you're prescribing it. So instead of one client turning up saying, I want Twitter ads, another one turns up saying, I want Reddit ads. And before you know it, you've got 20 services.
Sure.
I think it's more of a case of stepping back and saying, what would suit the majority of our clients to help them scale or become more efficient, or for us just to deliver more value? And what can we pre-sell or upsell or cross-sell to them to control that? And then this might drive a wedge into the agency, because then you start finding edge case clients that don't fit any of that, but you can see them becoming an issue in the future because they're going to have these bespoke demands of you because you have scaled them to a point where now they want more and more. And this is where you then might become even more specialist, because you say, well, we no longer work with that industry because they have all these specific requirements that just causes a headache. This is the problem with scaling an agency.
And maybe I'll add to your point about control. Yeah, I agree with you about control, but I think that, there's a couple of things that, at least how we do it. One is we're being transparent with the clients that you're asking for something that we don't do. Our core service is XYZ, because to me, like branding and how customers perceive us is very, very important. So I say, hey, we're gonna source one for you, right? So you know what to expect. We're gonna manage them, but at the same time, we do manage them through our through our lens, like through our approach. So one is like, how you calculate goals, how you kind of track towards goals, weekly reporting, like all of that stuff is in our shape and our format, or and like only just like specific optimizations, like you may be optimizing audiences differently, slightly differently in Pinterest compared to Google Ads, as an example, or that's, or keywords or whatever, right? But we still have that step internally to say you need to optimize that piece, right? Now, you may do it differently just because it's a different platform, but like we do require, like we have like a very methodical approach to managing accounts. So making sure that, they do the thing, like audience management as an example, or bid, optimization, that type of, or budgets, like that type of thing. But they do it within the constraints of that platform. So they still are familiar with our process, except like the specific steps would be different just because it's a different platform, right? They can, manage it that way. But we want to make sure that, the items are checked, everything is presented in a way that Scube would present.
Yeah, your agency's house rules.
Exactly.
And again, this is another place or component where people they overthink it. Like your processes, they can be, or your SOPs can be so simple. Like for budget management, they can literally be we get the budget from the client and we're allowed to spend X over or X under. And if this happens, we take this action. And if it's really bad, we do this, we escalate it. That could be your budget management SOP, because people get into this thing where they need to create these vast processes that are heavily documented that will then change all the bloody time, need to be updated. So that's another thing. People overthink the SOPs. They can be super simple. For this thing, bullets. For this thing, bullets. Says the guy that created God Tier Ads, a massive framework of stuff. But that's an exception. That's like a manic person. That's me just dumping everything in a thing. You're meant to take slices out of it. It's probably someone that works top to bottom every day. Bless them. Yeah, this is very interesting. Because you've been doing this for so long, and you mentioned the 2020 vision, hindsight, I think it's always good to reflect. So in hindsight, if your first hire, who was your first hire? Did you say it was your wife, technically?
Yeah.
So in hindsight,
but hold on. So first full-time, right? We can call it that way, because I did have freelancers help me. Yeah,
first full-time hire. If you had your time again, was that the right role to hire for, or would you do something different?
Well, yes, ultimately, yes. And whenever I meet up with my other agency friends, some of them who don't have a strong ops person, they say like, "Hey, Tom, you're lucky," just because like I have to deal with this stuff. So I would say that it does require a specific type of person with specific type of maybe capabilities and character traits. Her background is in finance and accounting, so she's got bachelor's in finance, master's in accounting. Also, she's super direct, right? Which is good because like you have to be direct with people to solve problems. Because on the in the back of the house,
I think most clients like it, and most people like being told directly. Does she? Oh, sorry, she doesn't deal with clients though.
She does with some.
Okay.
And the main reason is that we have lost one account manager who, and we just had to to maintain the relationship. She took over because the account manager was reporting to her, but that's going to change as soon as we have a new team member onboarded. But like technically, based on her role, doesn't. But at the same time, she needs to act as a buffer. Somebody leaves, she needs to cover for that until the person is until a new hire is in place. Yeah, so I'd say.
Sorry, can she do Google Ads?
Yeah.
So brilliant. So
she was an analyst, you know, in corporate America. So she does that, and also she was trained on Google Ads.
The
But
perfect first hire, I believe.
I mean, I trained her on Google Ads essentially. Yeah, and
but an operational head of operations, even if it's not in name, but I think that's the perfect hire. Someone who handles operations, even if that's just handling the Google Ads accounts, the reporting, and some of the client comms.
yes, and yeah. So that's so. Maybe I'll add to that. You have to have someone who's very methodical and who's process driven. It's almost like someone's like not like a sports car, but someone's like freight train. Once they get pretty much like their momentum, like they move no matter what the roadblocks is, because clients will leave, team members will leave, there will be problems, all kinds of, but like moving and going further. So overall, I'm very very happy that she joined my team because because of those qualities, because I'd say consistency and making sure that pretty much like things are working the way they're supposed to working. One thing maybe to add to this is that, and actually it was probably one of the biggest compliments. One client said, Scube is run like a well-oiled machine. And that was more of a compliment to her, which was like, shit got done on time. And it was just like, the way the way the client, expected. So I'd say like, that's the role that you need to have.
It's a massive trust builder. If just being reliable, boring and reliable is good.
Yes. And yeah, one thing that maybe was challenging sometimes is that some more technical things, because I'm always like deep into like more technical issues, but like highly technical areas, maybe it's not necessarily her strength, but I would say like the fundamentals, client communication, making sure that like stuff is done, like pretty much like everything is working. That's, I would say, is her strength. And I've noticed that you need more of that, maybe like 80% of that and maybe 20% of that sometimes, but I can always, or other team members, they can help with like some more technical aspects.
Yeah, everyone tries to hire a unicorn, and it's again thanks to bloody social media where you're told that you need to hire a unicorn, but you hire for the primary role, and any additional skills or experience is a bonus. Like if you're head of operations, you should be, in this context, you should be decent at Google Ads, but you shouldn't be you don't have to be the best, because most likely as the agency grows, there'll be another person under that head of operations or head of performance, whatever we call them, who is the Google Ads pure geek. And there might be multiple, and ultimately there might be people under those. But you've got, I don't want to say you've got it slightly easy. It's your wife. She can't really leave the business. I think one thing that people might be saying is, Tom, you've cheated there, because that's you've hired your wife. So all the shit bits of the job she might complain about, but it won't make her leave. And I think if you hire someone in this role, which I think is a very good idea, especially when you're at the 25K a month mark, for Google Ads agencies, it's quite similar for SEO agencies. But I think if you hire someone in that position, you need to quickly identify, and when I say quickly, within a period of months, the shit bits for them. So the bits they don't enjoy, because if they're really good, you want them to stick around, because this will be a pivotal role for your agency's growth and your head as well, because it unlocks so much of your time and mental energy not doing all the bloody work. But you have to understand what they don't like, so then you can hire for their pains as well. So you're preparing for that next level, because you freed up your time, you go off and do your marketing, and it works because you've now got time to do it. And then your head of ops is fatigued or frustrated by these things. Well, you hire for those because you're now trying to protect your head of operations. So you have to think about that.
You just don't dump all this, shit, to your head of ops and say, deal with it.
It's a tough job.
It's a tough job, but we divide and conquer. There are certain issues that, so we do talk a lot about, these, different issues and some, I advise, I help out on certain things, like same thing on her. Like, sometimes I need hey, we're negotiating a certain deal with the client. We talk, we kind of think things through together to ensure that we come up with the best possible solution. Cause that's how we grow. I mean, together, cause you can't know, at all, and you typically need just you need like a third party perspective to come up with a good decision. Sometimes like it won't change the outcome, but at least you have heard like, hey, somebody's thinking maybe in a slightly different way. I'd say the approach that we take.
So you've got this far, you've hit that magic number where you're over the 7-figure number in revenue. So what's the plan from here? Are you happy? Or we're never happy though, are we? You want to go again, scale again, or not?
The way I think about it is that I would like to scale, continue to grow, but I'm a big believer of sustainable growth. So it's something that allows let's say me to live my life, team to live their lives, properly in a balanced way, but at the same time grow. So I think in order to grow I want to build essentially an agency that can be sellable. If I wanted to sell it one day, no interest in doing that. But let's say if I wanted to, I want to build out all different roles in the team. That it's kind of like a living and breathing organism that does not necessarily require my day-to-day involvement. That's essentially like the ultimate goal. In terms of like the dollar, like the sales figure, I'm thinking it has to be probably between 2 and 3 million a year, because then there's enough room for a leadership team. There's enough room for full-time sales and marketing team. So I think that's the next big milestone that I'm trying to reach. The other thing that I'm trying to do, it's more like a personal thing. I know quite a few guys, quite a few friends who have reached Inc. 5,000 list. I don't know, it's like, maybe it's tacky, whatever, but it's like I would like to get to 2 million with a certain level of growth, just to get on the list. Don't want to be like number one, or like I don't want to see like super growth, but it's just like something that just to kind of check off and just tell it to my kids like, hey, I did it.
Yeah, this comes back to the shit list for me. I don't care about awards, credentials, and stuff like that. I care about what makes me happy, what frees me up. I try and let my ego stay out of the way, so it doesn't become more, particularly like more revenue, more this, more clients, more. I'm very much now, I don't know if it's because it's an age thing, because I'm 42 this year, but I now think about how I'm going to be. Is that going to make me happier, healthier, better? Do I need that extra money? Do I need to be on that list to keep up with my mates? Do I really care what my mates think about me? I don't know. These are all questions that, do these things make you happy? Yeah.
And it's maybe like, as I said, it's not the main thing, but it's something that I thought, to me, one thing was like, I almost like felt maybe almost like incompetent, like before we reached 7 figures. I thought like, because some guys I know, like they build like big companies doing tens of millions of dollars, and I'm like, well, look at me, with a small business, Yeah,
but 99% of people don't even make 100 grand a year.
Maybe,
and
yeah.
If you extrapolate the world, it's 99% of people are under like I think it's $1,000 or something a month. So if you can hit 6 figures as a freelancer or solo agency, as long as you're not destroying yourself, pulling your hair out, you should give yourself a pat on the back. If you can maintain that, phenomenal. If you can get to 200, amazing. If you can get to 1 million, brilliant. Do not underestimate how hard it is to get to 500 and 1 million. And to be honest, it gets a bit simpler. It's a bit easier, sorry, not simpler. It gets a bit easier after that sort of 30, 40K a month mark, because you've got that critical mass. You likely got a team beneath you. You've got that cash flow. You should have some profit that's your buffer. And it does get a bit easier. And going from 1 mil upwards, you've got that big springboard.
Right.
But you're certainly not a failure for hitting $1 million bloody dollars.
No, until I did it. And I know. It was just like, sometimes the content you watch, sometimes people you talk to, it makes you feel in a certain way. And I think that's maybe like back and things do change. Maybe like in 2-3 years, I'll be like, you know what, forget that. No longer a factor. Right. But based on that, it's like, I think it's always good to have some sort of a North Star. What do you want to achieve as a business? Because I've noticed like the other thing, even with the team members, they want to improve and they want to have they want to see some sort of growth because their career is growth. Otherwise, you're going to keep them only for, let's say, a year or two, and that's it. So making sure that you kind of clear out some sort of like growth path for the team members and making sure that like they get successful, they are able to kind of grow with you. I think that's a factor, because I think that there's one focus on like your own personal side, but also once you have a bigger team, now I feel a big responsibility for the team. It's like, hey, we are supporting quite a few team members, and their families, their kids, making sure that they have a good life. So continuing on that, I know that they have growth aspirations. They may not want to work on the accounts anymore someday, right? Need to make sure that there's enough room within the agency that they can still stay with us, but at the same time they can take on a different role. Maybe like there's a specialized role, maybe there's a kind of like a team manager role, team lead role, maybe even a sales role. I don't know, but the point is that there are opportunities to grow, not just enhance your own career as an agency owner, because it stays with you, right? But at the same time, serve other people and make sure that they get their goals met, whatever their goals are, and hopefully we can meet those as best as we can.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I am empathetic to that. But ultimately, and I've learned this the hard way, the agency owner, you're the one that risks everything essentially, especially in the early days. So you should be rewarded for that. And I think if that means, I used to take the shitty stick. So I'd like, if anyone's got a problem, pass it uphill to me. And I've slowly realized over the years, that's not fair on me. And it's actually very hard to deal with. So I pass it back down more these days because it's like, hold on a minute, that's my luxury for risking and putting all this energy in and risking all the financial side of things. And that's the other important thing. If you get to 1 million or you get to 500 grand, whatever it may be, 10 million, if you're not enjoying it and you're not extracting that dividend, that reward of a bit more free time, a bit more headspace, another holiday if you want another holiday, or you want another dog to walk, these things that make you happy, then, right. And I don't mean the material things like a new Lamborghini, the crap that we can ignore, the healthy things, then I think you have to make time for those. And that sometimes does mean that you are prioritizing yourself in the business, which I think is a just reward, which is sort of, a lot of people don't like to say it, but, I'm not saying don't look after your staff, by the way.
Yeah.
Remember who's also earned that reward ultimately. And the thing is, you're the one constant. You're not going to leave the agency. You can't. Well, you can leave it. You can sell it, but you're that one employee that's going to be around forever. And regardless of what you do, it's very difficult to keep an employee. You can pay bonuses, you can pay more money, but it's not always down to the financial reward, as you've just said. So I think you have to expect that someone will eventually want to leave because they want to get to a point that you can't fulfill, some stage higher, and that's okay. And again, that becomes easier with critical mass, i.e. you have more people because you make more money, and you could afford to lose someone apart from the wife. Can't afford to lose the wife. She's in a very crucial role, so she's essentially co-founder now.
Yep.
Brill. Tom, that's been very interesting, I think. From my perspective, I'm sure everyone else thinks the same. Hopefully I didn't waffle too much and cut you off, but I love that you brought a timeline jotted down. That's super, super important. I might have to do one of them myself. I think there's some golden nuggets in there.
Good. Hopefully it was helpful, for, your community and, your YouTube channel. I used to be in a different mindset years ago, which is like, I've got all the secrets and I'm not going to share anything, but I realize it's actually different. You have to apply stuff, but at the same time, what I've noticed is that probably like the most successful people, like they do share, and they're fine with, their lessons learned, their mistakes. I I used to be kind of afraid of mistakes. Now I'm like, well, I messed up in a few areas, but that's fine. I learned from them, through reflection and, changing course and all of that stuff. But
if you're
yeah,
afraid of mistakes, you'll never take a step. It's part for the course. It's part of the process, and sharing is also very powerful. If you think you've got the secret, you haven't. And that's true for me. I used to be the same way. You don't want to share because you don't want to give it away. What are you giving away? And you've got to remember that you and I and other agency owners and budding agency owners watching this, we're unique. As I said before, majority of people are not putting themselves through this. So you could
exactly.
I give so much information away. You could buy my framework for like less than $1,000 at the minute. Price is going up. I mean,
Oh,
if
is
you
that much?
applied that, it's 13, 14 years of my brain distilled. Just follow it and it works. But I know, sadly, that most people won't apply it. They'll buy it, think about it. And this is not to kick anyone. It's just life. So if you're sat there thinking, I'm going to implement, Tom said something useful, Ed didn't, go and implement it, because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the winners are. The people that literally try it, do it, fail, learn, rinse, repeat.
Yep.
Tom, where can people find you?
I'd say find me on LinkedIn. I think that, I don't post on Facebook. I don't post on Twitter or any of the other areas. I would say LinkedIn. This is where I'm planning to be more active this year. You can go on, I think, linkedin.com/Tom Bukevicius or whatever
I'll put a link in the description.
Yeah.
And to your website, Scube Marketing. Yeah, Tom's surname, I can't even say it, so I'm not even going to pretend to say it. Bukevicius. Vicious
Yes.
Tom.
There you go.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Hope you enjoyed it. I know I did, even though it's late here, so but I appreciate your time. Yeah, good luck for the next stage in the journey.
Thanks.